This is Guadalajara, Mexico, but it could be anywhere. Like all big cities, what lies beneath its streets is a labyrinth of pipes, cables, and tunnels. Out of sight and out of mind. Until the unthinkable happens. 206 citizens lose their lives. Now, using cutting-edge computer technology, we reveal exactly what went wrong. Disasters don't just happen, they're a chain of critical events. Unravel the fateful decisions in those final seconds from disaster. Latin America, Mexico, Guadalajara. April the 21st, 1992, 1:30 in the morning. It's the hottest time of the year in Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city. It's Holy Week. In the working-class neighborhood of Reforma, in the southeast of the city, a foul smell has been hanging in the air for 2 days. The Gomez family and their 4 children live on one of Reforma's busiest streets, Gante. But even though it's nighttime, they can't sleep. And it's not the heat that's keeping them awake.
Yo ingresé al baño.
I went into the bathroom.
Y era tanto el olor.
The smell was so strong. All the neighbors were complaining that the sewers, the bathrooms, and the drains smelt.
Y los baños, las alcantarillas, los sumideros olían a gasolina.
7 that morning. 20 blocks away from the Gomez family, Socorro Rios begins working in her tortilla shop. Her neighbors think the smell may be a gas leak coming from her kitchens. As a precaution, she calls the gas company. 2 engineers check out the problem and find nothing wrong. But the neighbors continue to complain, so she calls the gas company a second time.
They came again, and this time changed the regulator. Now supposedly everything was all right, but there was still a dreadful smell. I didn't know what to do, so I just ignored it.
10 a.m. Now it's not just the smell. People report seeing gas plumes coming out of manhole covers. Something is wrong underground. But smells from the city's sewers are not uncommon. Guadalajara is a boomtown. In a race to develop industry and create jobs, companies often ignored environmental regulations. They frequently dumped illegal waste into the sewage system. (1 p.m.) The smell is getting worse. Jorge Santoya works for the water authority, CIAPA. He's in charge of security and public health, and he's concerned.
We were examining the sewage pipes to try to discover the source of the contamination.
But the inspection doesn't get to the cause. Meanwhile, the fire brigade reassure people that there's nothing to worry about. It's now been 3 days since people first noticed the smell. And despite the authorities' assurances, the problems are getting worse. Residents now discover gasoline in their fresh water supply. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez lives at 547 Gante Street.
Yo fui hacia la pila.
I went to the sink and got very scared because I turned on the tap and it smelled like a petrol pump.
2 in the afternoon. The gas plumes coming from the manhole covers reach almost 2 meters high. The water authority becomes increasingly concerned. when they test the gases in the sewer, the results reveal there's a 100% risk of explosion. According to witnesses, one water authority employee advises residents to leave their homes. He warns them that the sewers beneath Candy Street are a time bomb waiting to explode. But the official line from city authorities is still, stay put and keep calm. Some local inhabitants are so worried they venture into the rat-infested sewers to see for themselves. One of them is Sergio Gomez, an engineering student who works part-time in the family plumbing business.
We were restless due to the stench of gasoline coming, not only from the manhole covers, but from the toilets. Samples were taken by some neighbors and some authorities. When we examined them against the light, the vapors looked and smelled like gasoline.
Midnight, and the smell is even stronger. The water authority is now very worried. Engineers still can't discover the source of the smell. They fear an imminent explosion, and they pump large amounts of water into the sewer to dilute the gasoline. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez hears all the activity and goes outside to investigate.
There were a lot of firemen, police and transit authority people, and I asked them if it was dangerous that we slept here. They told me to do what I wanted. All they were doing was simply washing the sewers. If we wanted to leave and go to some relatives, to go ahead, and if not, stay, as there was nothing wrong and no danger.
9:40 a.m. on April the 22nd. It's been nearly 4 days since the troubles in Reforma began. By now, there are so many complaints from residents that the city's fire chief, Trinidad Lopez Rivas, gives a radio interview and tries to calm people down. He insists that the situation is under control and there is no risk of an explosion. His comforting words play on the morning news bulletins. The reality is very different. The people of Guadalajara know something is still wrong. They can see it, smell it, and taste it. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city. There's a dangerous buildup of explosive gas in the main sewer. For 4 days, people complain of the smell. They even report that gasoline is coming out of their bathroom taps. But despite their pleas, the city's fire chief Lopez Rivas insists there is nothing to worry about. Engineers from the water authority are trying desperately to locate the source of the contamination. Their meter reading shows the situation is critical. But even with this knowledge, Jorge Santoyo, who's in charge of security and public health, is powerless to order people to leave the area.
The decision to evacuate was not ours to make. That should have been made by the firemen or the Civil Protection Agency, because they have the expertise to determine whether a situation is high risk or not.
But no one is willing to give the order to evacuate. With nowhere else to turn, residents call a local radio station. Reporter Luis Fernando Loza rushes to the scene. He's shocked that no one is being told the truth.
Claro que pudo haberse evitado.
No one warned them. No municipal authority, no state authority took the responsibility of saying, we must get out of here. Nobody dared order an evacuation of this scale. This hadn't been done in the past, and there was a lack of knowledge about how to carry this out.
It's 10 o'clock on the morning of April the 22nd, 1992. Lilia Ruiz sets off for the day's shopping.
Alrededor de las 10 de la mañana, yo decidí.
At around 10 a.m., I decided I would go to the local market close to Ganti Street. I got on the Route 333 bus.
Ruta 333.
10:05 a.m. Socorro Rios is joined by her sister Alejandra in the tortilla shop.
When my sister arrived, there were a lot of people there waiting for tortillas, so I asked my sister to bring me a bucket of water. But since she had brought my breakfast with her, she said, "I will bring you some juice from across the street." I told her, no, fetch the bucket of water first.
10:05 and 30 seconds. Instead of going onto the street to buy the juice, Alejandra goes in the opposite direction to the back of the shop. It saved her life. The tortilla shop on Rio Lagos Street suffers the full force of the blast.
When I turned round, I saw a really bright light. I mean extremely bright. And a boom so loud that I was completely blind and deaf.
Her tortilla shop collapses on top of her. She's buried in the rubble. The blast tears underground along the sewer line. 3 blocks away, the 333 bus is picking its way through the congested streets. Lilia Ruiz is one of the passengers on board.
I don't remember any noise, any voices, any screams, anything.
I
think that I had been instantly hit very hard. So hard that it knocked me unconscious. When I regained consciousness, I was already being saved from the rubble. I will never know how I got out of the bus.
Where pavement and houses stood only seconds before, there is now a huge crater running along the street filled with rubble. But this is just the beginning. The explosions roll down the sewer, destroying every street above. Sergio Gomez is at home on Ganti Street with his family, preparing to celebrate his 25th birthday.
It was a muffled sound that came from underground. It shook our house, many cracks appeared in the wall, and the street became dark. I hugged my mother and dragged her under a door. I yelled to my sisters to get under a door frame. The house was shaking. There were many explosions, really strong. Things falling down, windows breaking.
10:06 a.m. The first emergency calls start pouring into the Red Cross control room. One reports a car crash. A bus has fallen into a ditch. The explosions continue. There's one at 10:10. One at 11:30. Nowhere is safe. People have no idea where to run or where the next explosion will be. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez's home on Gante Street is destroyed in an instant, trapping her in the debris.
I felt the ground sinking from under me. And when I fell, a dead man fell sideways on top of me. And with his chin, he fractured my neck.
The Red Cross are inundated with calls. The house has completely disappeared. Manhole covers are flying off. Injured people need help fast. People are dying. Socorro Rios still lies buried in the rubble of the tortilla shop, not knowing if anyone will find her.
I felt helpless because when I was in the middle of the rubble, I couldn't even breathe. I started to pray to God. I heard a voice that told me, "Don't worry about yourself, I'll always be with you." And that is when I lost consciousness.
With so many roads blown up or blocked, the emergency services struggle to reach her and others injured by the blasts. They finally make it to the tortilla shop and begin to dig Socorro out of the rubble.
I came to when they were taking me out. A taxi arrived and they took me and my sister to the medical center.
It's now 10:20 a.m., 14 minutes after the first explosion, and more blasts rip into the city. Many of the explosions are bearing down on Gante Street. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez is still trapped. She has a broken neck and can't move, but she can see what's going on around her.
A small girl fell next to me, and then a paving slab smashed the right side of her chest. In that moment, she bled to death.
The district of Reforma is like a war zone. For survivors like Sergio Gomez, the scene is beyond belief.
There were no houses. There was debris everywhere.
Over an hour has passed since the first explosion, and still the blasts continue. At 11:30, two simultaneous explosions destroy Rio Bravo Street and Rio Nilo Street. The scale of destruction is immense. There are already 100 dead. Many people are severely injured. The explosions subside for a while. Rescue workers can finally get in. They search for survivors and ferry the injured to hospital, but the respite is short-lived. 2:20 p.m. A final blast rocks González Gallo, one of the main streets in Reforma. Satellite photos taken minutes afterwards reveal the scale of the catastrophe. The explosions have lasted for 4 hours and 14 minutes. The devastation runs 8 kilometers along Gante Street, Rio Bravo, Rio Nilo, and all the way down to González Gallo. If this were New York City, it would be like an explosion had ripped out Broadway from Wall Street to Times Square. Jose Hernandez Clare is a news photographer. He borrows a motorbike and finds a way through the devastated streets to capture these amazing images.
It seemed like a war zone. It had a great impact on me to arrive and see the level of destruction. It took me a few minutes to be able to react and go into action and take pictures. I saw this truck on top of the remains of a house. That really showed me the intensity of the blast. It showed me how a huge blast made a truck weighing tons land right up there. I could see the people standing still as if under a spell.
5:11 p.m. The Red Cross reports now say that as many as 170 people are confirmed dead, and at least 500 are known to be injured. With so many wounded, the hospitals are filling up. Sporting arenas are turned into makeshift emergency shelters. The Red Cross issue a plea for medical supplies, blood and plasma. One sports stadium is turned into a giant morgue. They line up 146 bodies. Survivors arrive, dreading that they'll find a missing loved one. They're warned by a sign at the entry that tells them, "What you're about to see will be very painful, but we are here to help you in any way we can." Hundreds of people are still missing. Many rescuers dig with their bare hands, desperate to find anyone alive. Trying to help, some people bring in bulldozers to remove the wreckage. But it's too soon. Survivors are still buried in the rubble. In a daring act of bravery, Sergio Gomez and his friends lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop them.
It didn't take long for the heavy machinery to arrive. They started to run bulldozers. They accelerated and moved, but we wouldn't move. Finally, instructions were sent. The authorities arrived, and then they stopped the machinery.
At 10 that evening, the President of Mexico, Carlos Salinas, arrives in the disaster area. It takes him until dawn to walk through the devastated streets. He's stunned by the enormity of what he sees. Over 15,000 people are homeless, 1,440 injured, and 206 dead. The President orders the Attorney General's office to investigate immediately. He wants a report back within 72 hours. He wants to know the reason for the explosions. Now, by rewinding the events of that fateful day, and by going deep into the investigation, we can reveal what really happened. State-of-the-art computer graphics will take you where no camera can go, into the heart of the disaster zone. Guadalajara sits in a major earthquake zone. At the moment of the first explosion, scientists watching seismic monitors see them hit 3.3 on the Richter scale. This is the equivalent of over 13 tons of TNT exploding in one go. Could an earthquake with an epicenter over the district of Reforma have caused the tragedy? The devastated area looks like the aftermath of an earthquake, but the investigation team study the damage. They quickly realize it runs in a continuous line following the path of the streets. An earthquake wouldn't do this, so the team dismissed the theory. Instead, they turn their attention to the underground tunnels that lie beneath Reforma. They make an extraordinary discovery. Guadalajara, Mexico's second city, has been ripped apart by a series of catastrophic explosions. There's something in the water. Now, using advanced computer graphics, we go into the heart of the disaster zone to reveal exactly what went wrong. The question now facing the investigators is what could have caused a series of explosions with the destructive power of an earthquake. The line of destruction follows the main underground sewer. In the 3 days leading up to the blasts, many of the residents complained about the smell of gasoline. There must be gasoline in the sewers. But where did it come from? Reforma is an industrial area. There are over 40 factories and chemical plants nearby. The biggest is a refinery run by the state-owned oil company Pemex. It becomes the focus for investigators. But they run straight into a mystery. At the time of the original complaints, Pemex management ran their own tests. Pemex officials say these tests reveal that all their plant and equipment is in perfect order, and they are not to blame. But they say their investigations do reveal the presence of another dangerous chemical in the sewer.
Pemex engineers came to the site. They commented, because of the characteristics of the explosions and the type of vapors that were found in the inspection holes, that this could be caused by a gas called hexane used in the cooking oil industry.
Hexane has many of the properties of gasoline, including a similar smell. Most importantly, it's an extremely flammable liquid that gives off a highly explosive vapor. And it has a very low flash point, only -22 degrees centigrade. Hexane is used to extract oil from seeds and vegetables to make cooking oil. Scott Steedman is a civil engineer specializing in disasters.
Hexane is a strong irritant, which means it causes lightheadedness, and its fumes are very toxic. It's also extremely flammable, and it's perhaps one of the last things you'd want in a sewer system.
Pemex officials then release a statement saying that a local cooking oil factory is responsible for releasing hexane gas underground. But the company La Central denies responsibility. They say they use very small quantities of hexane in their production process, not enough to cause the size of explosions that hit Reforma. Their claim is backed up by the investigation team, who examined water samples taken the day before the explosions. They find no evidence of hexane. It couldn't have caused the blast. Pemex's claim is inaccurate. The people of Reforma are still convinced gasoline is to blame. They know this is not the first explosion in the area, and there have been similar explosions in this very area in recent years. One was in 1983, the other in 1991, only a year before the disaster of April the 22nd. Both were powerful enough to blow off manhole covers, and both were found to be caused by gasoline. Raquel Gutierrez is a lawyer who represents some of the families affected by the disaster.
The first incident took place in 1983 near Independencia. There were explosions due to the combination of diesel hydrocarbon. It's practically the same area where the explosions occurred in 1992.
But if gasoline was to blame, where was it coming from? Surprisingly, Guadalajara sits on top of a major gasoline distribution pipeline. A pressurized steel pipeline built in 1973, just over 30 centimeters in diameter, carries gasoline from the Pemex refineries in Guadalajara, close to Reforma, to Salamanca, 238 kilometers away. The investigation team inspects the pipeline. Then, there's a breakthrough. They discover that gasoline is flooding a pavement close to the Pemex refinery and that the leak is coming from underground. But the pressurized pipeline is made of steel. How could it fail? Guadalajara's underground network of pipes grew to service the booming economy. The result? A haphazard maze of overlapping pipes and cables carrying water and fuel. When the investigators dig down beneath the flooded pavement, they discover that a water pipe has been bent round the pressurized steel pipeline. At the point where they touch, there's a small hole where gasoline is leaking out. But how can the water pipe pierce the much tougher steel-reinforced gasoline pipeline? They send the pipes to Mexico's top metallurgists, Jorge Uruchoto and Jose Maria Malo, to try to find the answer.
The way it was resting, the bigger hole on the water pipeline coincides with the hole.
As erosion takes place, the wall of the gasoline pipeline decreases and the leak of gasoline takes place.
The metallurgists report that it's the different metal composition of the pipes that leads to their corrosion.
Different metals have different chemical compositions, and when they touch each other, certain metals, when touching other metals, can cause a chemical reaction to occur, and that can lead to corrosion, or one or both of the metals.
The water pipeline is made of iron coated in zinc. The gasoline pipe is steel. Together in wet ground, these metals destroy one another. Even though the hole is only 1 centimeter wide, the pressure forces the gasoline to gush into the soil. It's estimated that 600,000 liters of highly explosive gasoline leaked into the soil. That's about 18 petrol tankers, a huge amount of fuel. The leak in the gasoline pipeline is only meters away from one of Reforma's sewage tunnels. The fuel quickly spreads to surrounding soil and envelops the tunnel, seeping in through the cracks and entering the sewage system. But as if a contaminated sewer weren't bad enough, the leak seeps into the surrounding water pipes and enters Reforma's drinking water supply. Investigators now know how gasoline gets into the sewer and water supply, but they are still puzzled. Why are there so many explosions over a 4-hour period? A series of massive explosions devastates the Mexican city of Guadalajara. Investigators now know that a broken gasoline pipe is to blame. But why was there a series of explosions over the space of several hours instead of one massive blast? They discover that Guadalajara has been extending its light railway system by adding a new underground line. But engineers digging the new subway have hit a problem. The city's main sewer lies right in their path.
Construction of a new metro meant they had to divert the main sewer down and then up again, forming a U-bend under the metro line.
Investigators then work out that the pattern of explosions spreads south from where the sewer is diverted around the subway tunnel. It's a strong lead, and the design of the diverted sewage tunnel now becomes the focus of the investigation. Sewers are traditionally built with a slope so that gravity carries the waste downhill. But the building of the new metro has forced the new section of sewage tunnel to pump its contents uphill. The pumps are designed only to drive liquid sewage. The dangerous gasoline fumes build up and remain.
Now this had very serious consequences because although fluid could pass down through the U-bend and out the sewer, fumes would be trapped upstream of the metro line.
Upstream of the metro line is Gante Street, and the blocked fumes back up all the way to there, filling the sewer network in between. 3 days before the explosions, the residents of Reforma complain of the smell coming from the sewer.
The smell was so strong. It was a really horrible stench of gasoline.
36 hours before the explosions, the gasoline vapor begins to concentrate. Some of it escapes through manhole covers and drains. The rest builds up in various parts of the sewer, forming highly explosive pockets of gas. These pockets exist all along the main sewer that runs under Reforma and in some of the small feeder pipes.
As the gas fumes would back up in the main sewer, so the concentration of the gas would be higher in some places and lower in other places. So you might have branch sewers that were filled with fumes, or the main sewer itself. But with the different concentrations, the higher concentrations would explode first.
24 hours before the blasts. The smell spreads to the sewer outside the tortilla shop where Socorro works.
The 4 days before, it smelled a lot like gas. The customers that came in were asking me if there was a gas leak. They said, "It smells a lot. What's happening?"
26 minutes before the first blast, the fire chief goes on the radio and insists there is no risk of explosion. But he's wrong. The consequences of the leaked fuel in the sewage pipe and the buildup of gas are inevitable. It's now just a question of time. 10:06 a.m. The first explosion occurs 675 meters from where the sewer is diverted around the new subway line. It destroys 20th of November Street and the top of Gante Street. 10:10, a second massive explosion destroys much of Violeta Street. 2 blasts at 11:30 devastate Rio Bravo and Rio Nilo. Then at 2:20 p.m., the sewer that crosses under Gonzales Gallo explodes. The chain of critical events is complete, but there is one big question that remains. The gasoline had been leaking for months, so why did the disaster strike on April the 22nd? To answer the question, investigators have to go back to the days leading up to the blasts. The answer comes from an unlikely source. On the night of April the 18th, residents found it difficult to sleep, but not just because of the terrible smell coming from the sewers. The temperature in Guadalajara hits 31 degrees centigrade. The high temperatures continued into the early hours of the morning of April the 22nd. As the heat permeates down into the drains, it makes the gasoline fumes rise in greater volume to the streets above. And they are now at flashpoint. All it needs now is a spark. Ironically, attempts by the Water Authority to investigate the smell may have triggered the blasts. On that day, gangs are at work across the city, lifting manhole covers to release fumes from the sewer. Metal struck by metal can cause a spark. Perhaps a workman jamming a crowbar into a manhole cover or dropping a cover back into a hole created that fatal spark. But the authorities' tests revealed there was also a high risk of explosion in the days leading up to the disaster. So why didn't they order the evacuation of Reforma and save hundreds of lives? A catastrophic sewer explosion has devastated Guadalajara, a city of over 3 million. The official death toll is 206 people, but could those deaths have been avoided? Tests by the Water Authority on the days leading up to the disaster revealed there was a 100% chance of an explosion. So why didn't somebody in authority order the area to be evacuated? The Attorney General's investigation results in 9 people being arrested following the explosions. They are the city's mayor, Enrique Dao Flores, 4 Pemex officials, 3 Water Authority employees, and a government official. They spent 8 months in custody, but their case never comes to trial. All were released without charge, and the inquiry into the tragedy closed without anyone being found guilty of responsibility for the disaster.
It's shameful to see how an event of this nature that shouldn't have surprised the authorities took them by surprise. They never thought they'd have a disaster of the magnitude of April the 22nd.
A mass evacuation could have saved the people of Guadalajara. But neither the police, the fire brigade, nor anybody else in charge was prepared to make that decision. Local residents even dispute the official death count of 206. Nobody is really sure. The official report doesn't detail the number of injured or the property destroyed. Lloyd's of London, who underwrote the loss, do. They estimate that 252 people died. 1,440 were injured, and more than 15,000 were left homeless. Damage is reported to 1,124 houses and 450 businesses. Insurance company Lloyd's quantify the cost at between $300 million and $1 billion. But the human price of the tragedy is incalculable. Socorro Rio Blas fractured her skull and spine in the explosion. Now she cannot endure the pain of physical work and is only supported by her family.
I can't work, it's not the same. I can't lift heavy things and have to rest a lot because of the constant pain. I always have to have my pills with me just to get through the day.
Maria de Jesus Gonzalez broke her neck in the explosion. She wears a brace to hold her head. But after 5 years, it's worn out, and she can't afford to replace it.
I've always been told that my life is hanging by a thread, because my neck is glued, and the brace is what holds my head. You might have noticed that my head leans sideways. It hurts so much.
Lilia Ruiz lost her left leg. Once a year, she and most of the other survivors return to the scene of devastation to honor those who lost their lives at a mass dedicated to the victims. The owner of this former house on Gante Street lost 5 members of his family. He's made a vow that he'll never rebuild it. The site will stand as it is, a permanent memorial to the victims. The loss of so many lives is due to a critical chain of events that come together on that day. A badly engineered water pipe placed too close to a gasoline supply line caused a reaction called metal-to-metal corrosion. Both pipes leaked and gasoline flooded the soil. The leaking gasoline touched and then enveloped the city's main sewer. The gasoline entered the pipe and flooded the sewer.
The sewers, the bathroom, the drain smelled like gasoline.
The gasoline fumes built up, but they were blocked by an uphill section of the sewer, redesigned to accommodate a new subway. The fumes had nowhere to escape but through manholes and household drains.
All the smells that day caused headaches and nausea. It caused vomiting because it was such a strong smell.
The high temperatures created a hothouse for volatile gases. A spark ignited the trapped fumes, triggering the first blast.
It was a muffled sound, and it came from underground. It shook our house. Many cracks appeared in the walls, and the street became dark.
From then on, a series of explosions ripped through the sewer system, devastating 8 kilometers of the city's streets. And after the tragedy, the Pemex oil refinery shut down, and Pemex rerouted the high-pressure gasoline pipe away from the city. And now the old city of Guadalajara has a new sewer with a state-of-the-art monitoring system. It constantly measures the gases and toxins in the sewer to prevent such a tragic accident ever happening again.